This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Well, recent deadly attacks in Paris tied to Syrian refugees and members of ISIS have roiled international politics and created new heat in the diplomatic and political arenas. Here to talk politics is Arkansas Senior Senator John Boozman. Welcome back to the program. Always good to be with you.
Thank you so much, as always, for having me.
Let's talk about what's been going on overseas. It's consumed Washington, D.C. politics and really the whole national dialogue, international dialogue. Kind of what's been your immediate reaction now that more information has come out? Kind of where are you today in terms of your position on everything?
Well, I think that the most important thing is protecting the American public. That has to be number one. So there's real concerns. We're going over the ability for people to get into this country, not just through refugee status, but visa status, making sure that all of these things are set now, going to be set in the future, so that we can protect ourselves against terrorists. When you listen to what ISIS says, and you believe them, they've said, that they're going to use refugees and things like this to infiltrate countries. And so we have to react appropriately.
And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into that. Now, this past week, you and Senator Cotton came out with some statement on some things that you called for. And Senator Cotton had something interesting in his statement. I want to get your reaction to this. He said, you can't win the war on terrorism on defense. You have to win on offense. Do you believe that? And what does that mean to you? You have to go on offense.
I think you do have to go on offense. The question is, what's the smart way to do that? But the President of France called this an act of war by Islamic terrorists. Sadly, our President is calling it a setback. We don't want any setbacks occurring in this country. So I think you look at military strikes, you leave everything on the table, but you act appropriately with our allies. Right now, we're starting to step up our sorties against the enemy. We've given information to the French as to who they should be hitting. Sadly, that's information that we had. The questions you ask is, why haven't we done that already? But I do think, and I think that Senator Cotton believes this, the only thing that these people understand is force. And the only way that we're going to, get them on their heels is through use of force. And then now we're starting to hit the oil things, taking away their ability to finance themselves, which is also very, very important.
Could that involve boots on the ground, as they say? Could it involve American troops?
I think you leave that on the table, okay? What I'm interested in is talking to our Joint Chiefs of Staff, getting our military people, what they say that we need to be doing. And I think you also look to other sources, people like General Petraeus, who's certainly an expert in this area, asking them for advice. But I think you leave everything on the table. None of us want to get into a situation where we're occupying Syria or something like that. The question is, how do you do this in an effective way? And I think you turned to our experts to ask for that advice.
Here's some things that you guys called for too: a temporary moratorium on resettlement, evaluating security vetting procedures, presidential certification of that security process. How temporary of a moratorium do you think we're talking about? Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? Are we talking years?
Well, I think we're taking however long it takes to protect the American people and make sure that if we're going to bring in refugees, then we need to have those systems in place. There's real concern right now that simply it's so difficult to do that. The FBI director has made some statements that make us wonder. The president talks about checking databases, but if the databases don't have anything in them, that doesn't make a lot of sense. The House went further, this week and passed a bill that basically said, if you're going to have people come in here, then various agencies are going to have to sign off on all of them. And I think that's appropriate. Certainly I would support that.
I'm still looking for some higher or maybe some more definitive benchmarks or measuring sticks. I mean, to say that you support a temporary moratorium or some of these security vetting procedures, give me some concrete examples of, if this were to happen, I would be more comfortable with allowing refugees into the country in a more liberal way.
Right. I think that the benchmarks are making sure that we have an effective system in place so that terrorists that would like to infiltrate in that way could not be able to do that. And I don't think we really know what those are. Now, right now, they really have done a pretty good job of putting things in place, in the sense, I think we've only had about 1,500 or so Syrians enter the country, and they truly have, had this process What the president wants to do is up the numbers up greatly. And I think the concern of myself and the American public is, this is an individual that has such a lousy track record regarding immigration, securing our border and things like that. The question is he just going to unleash the doors? And again, I think that's a fair question based on his track record. And so I think Congress and the vote that we had in the House was a very bipartisan vote. I think we'll be voting on similar measures in the Senate and also have a very good bipartisan vote.
And it's likely to get vetoed.
But it's whatever it takes. Well, that's the president going on record. Mm-hmm. But it's whatever it takes. The number one job of myself and the rest of the Congress is protecting the American public.
So Donald Trump, GOP frontrunner for president, said this week, was asked about how he would go about handling the situation. I actually read his exact quotes, and he was they were leading questions a little bit, but nonetheless, he did not deny that he thinks that there should be some way to mark Muslims, is what he basically said. Should Muslims be tracked in America, is my question to you.
Well, certainly we haven't done those things in the past. And when I sit and visit with somebody, the last thing that I care about is what their religion is, or where they came from, because we've all came from different places and we all have different faiths.
So you say no, you shouldn't.
Well,
should
that's the hallmark, of America. So no, I mean, as far as tracking people by religion, no, I don't think we need to do that.
All right, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We're going to talk about some domestic things when we come back. You'll stick around?
Sure.
All right. He's Senator John Boozman. When we're back from this word from our sponsors, we'll have more. I'm Roby Brock. This is Talk Business and Politics. And we're back with U.S. Senator John Boozman. Senator, once again, thank you so much. Let's talk about some domestic issues, some things that are going on in Washington, D.C. Here in the state of Arkansas, there's been a lot of focus and talk about highway funding at the state level. Let's talk about what's going on at the federal level. In the short-term measures been passed in the U.S. Senate. When will we see a long-term measure on highway funding?
Well, right now we've had actually a long-term bill passed in the Senate, long-term bill passed in the House, some short terms to keep things going. As we're in conference right now, we're really discussing the differences in the two bills.
Yeah.
So I think—
What's the biggest difference?
Well, actually, there's the financing, how you pay for it.
So that's a great question. How are we going to pay for it?
Again, that's being worked out, literally as we speak. And so as a result, I think in the next few weeks that we will come to agreement and have a long-term bill, which is so important. Yeah. I would argue that one of the hallmarks of us having the great commerce, that we do, the industrialization, what we are as a country commercially, is the fact that we can move goods and services. The interstate, when it was created, was truly a wonder of the world. Yeah. So we've got to protect our infrastructure. This is very bipartisan. In fact, it's interesting. The two champions of this have been Jim Inhofe and Barbara Boxer. They have absolutely nothing in common, fight like cats and dogs, concerning the environmental stuff, but both believe, as do I, that there's a place for the federal government to step in and show leadership as we protect the infrastructure that we've got.
So what do you think will be the primary mechanisms for funding on this? Will there be a tax increase in some respect? Will there be some new tax code created to create new revenue for highway funding? What do you think will happen?
There's been people who have suggested increasing the gas tax and things like that. I'm opposed to that, and I think most members of Congress are. Mm-hmm. Really what we're trying to do is look at some of the different things that the Finance Committee has identified. The committees that have to do with the infrastructure identify where the money's going, and then the Finance Committee in the Senate and the Ways and Means Committee in the House are the ones that come together and do that. So they're trying to come to agreement now, and I'm really not sure exactly how that's going to pan out, but it's important that we get as long a term of the bill as we can, because when you build these things, when you build these roads, you have to know for sure that you've got long-term financing coming in. Right. If not, then you run into problems.
Good for construction jobs too. But
it's good for construction jobs, and that's great. But if it's done right, okay, and projects are vetted very closely now, the good thing is the aftermath. What comes in, the economic opportunity that's presented that, as a result of this.
So you've given me an example of something that you wouldn't support in terms of a tax increase for highway funding in that what's in conference right now. What would you support? What would be a new revenue source that you would not have a problem with?
Well, there's been all kinds of things that have been suggested, everything from, getting these, there's a couple $1 trillion worth of stuff, worth of income parked overseas that people are having trouble coming back to our country.
You'd support that?
Yes, I would support that.
Yeah.
And we need to do that anyway, because what happens is that money lays over there, and because they can't bring it home because the tax rate is so great, they start expanding the business that they've got over there. And so you can imagine, if we could capture some of that back in our economy, give a little bit towards roads and things like that, that really would be a big boost to our economy.
All right, on the subject of
just good policy.
On the subject of energy, the Clean Line project, you have had some reservations about what's going on in terms of that project coming through here. You've asked a lot of questions. You sent a letter in September to the Department of Energy chief, I believe. Has that still not been answered yet?
They sent a letter back, but it was one of those deals where, they answered, but they really didn't answer. They didn't answer our questions.
What answer are you looking for? What are the answers you're looking for?
Well, here's our real concern with the project is, always in the past, up until the law that allowed this was passed in 2005. This is the first time it's ever been used. You have the ability to use eminent domain and things like that. Coming out of Washington, always in the past, the state, the governor, our public service commission, those are the ones that have weighed in as to whether or not things were appropriate. We talk a lot about the Keystone Pipeline, which I'm very much in favor of. All of that, though, was written off on by the states as it was coming through. This would be a project where really the state of Arkansas would have no impact. A private company and the energy secretary essentially would determine it all. That's not right. We need to get it back local.
You want to ensure that there's some local input on it.
I want to make sure that there is local input, again, on behalf of the governor, the utility commission, things like that. That's why we introduced law, which has been supported by the associations that control those things.
I got about 60 seconds left here. You got a primary challenger now to go along with your general election challenger. You thought you were going to have an easy year this year. You don't get to run unopposed. You get to run scared. How is Curtis Coleman in the primary going to change your election strategies? Is it going to jumpstart some things for you?
Well, I think it does make you get organized a little bit earlier. We're going to continue to do the things that we do. We're here all the time, working hard for the people of Arkansas and the state, and then also working hard to represent them. And I think beyond representing, actually serving them, at the federal level, in the sense of the staff that works so hard on legislation and things like that.
He says you're not conservative enough. Are you conservative enough?
Well, I've been called lots of things through the years. Generally, not being conservative enough is not one of them. When you look at the major things, when you look at the NRA, Gun Owners of America, the people that are the stalwarts as far as the Second Amendment, I've got A ratings, with all of those. The right to life people, A ratings. The premier immigration, or not immigration, but anti-illegal immigration groups like Numbers USA, again, have a lifetime A rating with them. So I think my conservative credentials are very adequate. And again, what I say here in town, what I say in the state, translates into what I do in Washington.
All right, Senator John Boozman, as always, good to be with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.